Okay. And right.
Welcome to our interview with Transient Girl and Bobby.
That's right. Hey, Transient Girl.
Hello.
So, welcome to the second episode of our Apollo Architect Fall Series interview series. That series twice. Anyways, and today we will be joined with Transient Girl. Uh, hi. So, yeah, introduce yourself.
So, I'm Transient Girl, and I'm a musician and an artist, and who wants to use art as a means of forming community, building community, and connections. And that could be like as small as like one person. And I'm not here to try and like be famous or reach the whole world or anything, but if I can just create a small bit of change or in one person, I think that's just as big as and as important. So
So yeah, I was actually gonna talk about that. Transient Girl is a well, it'd be better if you described your music and your art and your poetry, what it's about.
you said to describe it?
Yes.
Okay, so kind of I guess what I was just saying. I basically want to use my music and poetry. For one, it's like a means of just saying things that I feel like I can't say or be fully transparent about in just like a conversation. It's a way of like, getting around those barriers in terms of like having a voice. And I also like, want to use that. Like for me, it's not just about like, it is like I can be in my room alone and create a song, and like that's very important to me. But also what it's about is like community. So like if mental health, being trans, all those kinds of things, addiction. And it's like I've used it to cope with those things. So for me, it's sort of my music is a way to get by and hopefully to also, build community that maybe someone can listen to it and be like, hey, I've been through that too. And like, feel like they're heard or validated or recognized or something. Um, yeah.
Right. So, how did you kind of get started with music before starting with the music that you create now at Transient Girl? How did you start with music?
I think so. I started when I was a kid. I just wanted to play music. I think honestly, it started because I'm a trans woman, and like in basically there was no like as like a being perceived as male as a child, like there wasn't really a safe space where you can wear makeup or like dress in like a so-called like feminine way. And I think like originally I looked at artists like Marilyn Manson or something. Like I don't even like his music, and I know he's not like trans or anything, but it's like I looked at stuff like that, like I and saw like in within music it was almost like more socially acceptable for people to be able to like dress in those ways, so or like act or whatever. So I remember like being in the bathroom as a kid and looking like making like a towel dress and like looking in the mirror and pretending I was on stage like playing a show. And like I think one day that's something I'm gonna actually do because I was like yeah. So I think I started with that, and then like I just wanted to like play drums. I know like basically like I had friends across the street and they wanted to make a band, and like I think my parents put me in piano lessons, but I hated that. And like basically for the people that wanted to be in a band with me, they had a guitarist, a bassist, and no drummer. So I was like, I think I want to be the drummer. And then like I would just start practicing like just on my hands and feet and stuff. And it's just like something that made me feel right. Like I just realized that's what I need to be doing once as soon as I started doing that. I think it's just like, yeah, yeah, it just makes me feel okay in the moment. It just felt like it was right.
Nice. So, when it comes to making music, what do you like the most about making music?
I think what I like most about it is like, I've kind of just been like underground, not even showing my music to people, but for these past months, just like going through rough times and shit, regardless of the virus or not, like it's just like I think music is just something that like helps me cope. Like I think that's for like on a personal level, I think that's what I like most about making music is like, like I know like a symptom of like PTSD or whatever is like throwing yourself into something to distract yourself, and like that's kind of always what music has been for me. It's just like I'll sit there for hours, and it's just like I think that's what I like. And like I said before, like the aspect of building community and um like like at my shows I would try to like let all like the trans people or people that felt that they could do that, like to hold candles, like everybody like coming together in terms of like, yeah, just like having that platform, but also it's like just like the beautifulness of building community that can go beyond just like people in that like basement, even though something like that's beautiful, like coming together. But it's like I really want more of my music to be able to be accessible to more like to everyone. And I know like there's barriers with that with the internet itself, because like some people just don't have access to the internet, but then it's like I think that also helps break some of those barriers. So I just like, all what I want, what I like about it is it makes me feel all right and cope. And it's like, hopefully someone else can hear that and like help them feel all right.
Nice,
That's about.
nice. Well, so we were talking about this before, but like we were actually talking about how we were going to do this interview a couple of days ago, and we got to talk about like what the role of art should be. Like, uh, basically, like with everything that's going on in the world right now, it almost feels like art by itself doesn't exactly have purpose. Like,
Yeah.
what do you think that art, like, what do you think would be like the purpose of art and music now, like in this kind of society where there's always like something happening in the political landscape?
Yeah, like I feel like it can have many meanings to many people, but like I think when it comes down to like marginalized people made, like, that purpose may be to cope or something. And also to like, you're right, I feel like it can't exist like just on its own. Like it's just with what's going on in the world. Like a lot of people make music for like social capital and stuff, and it's just I don't think that is making a change whether you talk about some issue or not. If you're just profiting off it and leave it at that you talked about it, like it's just I don't think that's enough. And like I think the role of music can be anything. It doesn't have to be serious. Like it could just be people having fun. But like I think for me, like what's important is like using that, like, I talked about a bit before, like about creating community. So like there's always going to be that in my statement about this. But I know something we also talked about earlier, like the other day, was sort of about like that in why you like punk music, or like in terms of like, yeah, using it to come together or whatever, like but I'd like to give my thoughts on that, I guess, because I thought what we were talking about was pretty interesting, and that's just what my mind's going to right now. So like, yeah, but it's like, like that's what I first when I first started playing, like I played punk music, and like this is me fully acknowledging, like, I grew up in like white suburbs and stuff, and like like like, and I feel like punk often, although it's like anti-authority, it's not really like, I mean, it's so centered around that, even though like its origins were not that. And I feel like punk has become something that is just very like a watered down version of like rebel. I think you said it's like a rebel without a cause. It's sort of become. And like, I think looking at it, like hip hop has been saying, doing a better job of like what punk is supposed to be in terms of like social change and speaking about these issues, mostly probably because it comes from marginalization. But like, yeah, so like it makes me think like definitely like punk bands that started and stuff like were probably marginalized people whose names we don't know. But like what it's become has like very dominated by like the white middle class and cis peoples, like, and I think what like if you look at like the origins of hip hop, like from the beginning it's been about that. Like it's been like when like one of like the early hip hop songs, the ones like "Don't push me cuz I'm close to the edge, trying not to
Right.
lose." Yeah, like that song came because like literally the Bronx in New York, I believe it was, yeah, and like was going to just be like burned down, like it was trying to be just burned down to be gentrified, and um like the fire departments were told not to do anything, and this was like like a community that was majority black people, low income, and like just like marginalization, and like the music that came out of that came from struggle and spoke about that, and it's like, yeah, just like I thought it's just like something to think about, like who's at like, because you were saying like the role of art nowadays, now that it's messed up, but I think it's important to also think about like what art has been always already about that since like the world ended a long time ago for people, for a lot of marginalized people. Like it's like we're in the end of the world now, like, but I think the role of art for some people has always been about social change and social justice and coping with marginalization. And I think like, the role, like when you look at it, it's like, yeah, like going back to like the hip hop thing, it's like people use what they had in terms of like a record player, rather than like having all like this gear and stuff. But just, yeah, I think like that the role of music and art obviously varies depending who you are. I think if you're a marginalized person, like do what like it's probably not my place, just like do whatever you want with music, like that's your choice. But I think if you're profiting and like making money off, especially if you're now talking about social issues, especially if they don't affect you, then like it can't stop there. It can't be like you made a song about this and now you're an ally. Like it has to be like more than that. It just doesn't, that doesn't do anything. You're just profiting off of the backs of people who are actually doing that work. And it's like,
Right.
yeah, that's like everybody wants to, like, not everybody, but a lot of it I see is like now that back when it like, like when it wasn't like cool to be like progressive or a feminist or something, like, or to be for like racial, like to against racial injustice or like transphobia or any of these issues, it was like the you can really, it's really telling when you look at like a band or something and see what they were talking about 5 or 10 years ago and what they're talking about now. And like what I've seen with like the punk scene, it's like those people that were making trans jokes or making fun of like people that were black, like that when I was in a band, like hanging out with some of these punk people. And it's like, like both of us in the band are facing some hate from these people. And then it's like now I go back to their profile after like blocking and deleting them, and it's like they're now talking about like, oh, like women in the punk scene, but then it's still centered around like white cis women. But it's like they're just like still going. It's just like it's really telling. It's like now that they can get social capital from that, that's what they're talking about. So I think the role of art is definitely has to be social change, but it can't just like stop at making a song about it. Yeah.
Right. So we were also talking about the other day. We were also talking about like the role of like using social media as a way to promote your music.
Hmm.
Uh, what do you think about like that? What do you think about well, using social media? Because for the most part, um, don't have too much of an like you don't have a lot of social media, but also a lot of people like respect your music, like respect Transient Girl's music.
Huh. I
But
didn't know. It's really sweet.
there are a lot of people who actually like in the scene. There are a lot of people who not so much. Well, yeah, definitely they respect your music. There is a lot of that in like a lot of people like what you said about trans issues and stuff like that. Like when you talked about what was going on like last year with Rainbow Saga Alliance or
Yeah.
yeah, which you might want to talk about. Actually, I'm not the best on.
No, no, you're good. Your music is really awesome. If anybody's listening to this, like definitely check out Bobby's music because like you inspire me to be like I listen to your tracks and I'm like holy shit, I'll never be as good as you or like whatever. But like it's not about that. But like you're so good. But anyways, to your question, you were saying sorry, what did you ask again? You said
Yeah.
about
So what I was asking was the role of social media because what social media's role is in promoting music because obviously it's used as promotion of music, but should it be more than that? Because
okay, yeah,
it's
thanks.
more than just promoting sound. Like we've
Mm-hmm.
just talked about that. Like should it also be used as a way to like we have this platform, we should stay more on it.
Yeah, like see, I it's such a hard that's like such a hard thing. Like I think about that a lot. And it's like, some people need social media to survive. Like some people's survival literally depends on Facebook or like Instagram or some shit. Like, but then and like I totally like that's why I'll never judge someone for like staying and promoting their music or whatever platforms, especially people who are in like extreme isolation or extreme marginalization, like third world countries or I don't like like living in just extreme like situations, especially when or like whatever like just like when it's like people need that to survive. That's what makes it so hard because at the same time it's like these these platforms in themselves are already like creating all this toxic and that just gives them more power in using them, and that's definitely not like the people's fault who depend on it to survive. But it's like how can you create something good on like a platform that's inherently fucked? That's kind of what I think about a lot. And like a platform where you're already thinking about what you're saying and how that's gonna like bite you, and like I don't know how can you actually like it's important to talk about, and then I understand for some people it's not even safe to talk about, and it's just like I don't really know. I feel like there's alternatives to that. Like personally, I've I think I'm just gonna make a website or something, but like it's like there are alternatives like that happen, and it's like I think it's important to like think about how we use the platforms definitely, like because we can use them in ways to talk about social issues that are strictly for like our profit, or we can use them to just talk about none of that and just like promote our music. and somebody who's like struggling that I'm cool with. But it's just like when you look at like, you know, it's like everybody's on there, but then how do you move away from it and move away from these toxic, like this really toxic environment? Because like I know like, you know, I mean, I don't think it needs to be said, but like everybody knows how like evil and greedy these corporations are, and like and what's going on. So like I think the fact that it doesn't have to be said even shows something, and it's just like I don't know, like I think we need to move away from them in the end, but like the bottom line has to be like the people that need these platforms to survive need them to survive, and like there has to be, we have to be looking at that when we're thinking about how we're going to change that. And like it's like somebody could just like go shame someone for being on social media like a lot of people do, but then some people don't see that that's people's like only support network, and that's where it gets scary, because like when there's that much control of this malicious, this platform that has malicious intent involved, it's just like, you know, there's so much that can go wrong with that, no matter like, you know, I'm just like I don't know, that's fucked, it's fucked up, and it's really hard like what the role of that is like, you know, social media is amazing. I don't think there's something wrong with social media. It's just like who like who's like what platform are we on, you know, like what's going like I think the internet is amazing, and it could be something so beautiful, like the way we could just like share our thoughts or music from like anywhere, and it can be like, no, it can provide people a voice, but then it's like figuring out, and I still have hope in that. I mean, there, because it's like, I think it's just like, I really hope that, I don't know, I don't know, it bothers me, and it's just hard to think about, like hard to know, like I don't know what to do in that, and I think like that's it, like I actually don't know, but I definitely think that like we all know what's happening, and it's almost like most like a lot of marginalized people are really forced to just be in that and get the brunt of that, and I think the people who have the privilege and maybe like to whatever like make that change, like it just needs to, like in moving away from it, we can't forget like that there's people there that here that need to survive, need it to survive. And I think it's like, if we're not changing the platform, maybe we have like to change how this platform works, like in terms of people who do certain work to survive, like why are they getting banned, you know, like why, like the fact that I'm not even going to say that, like it's just, why do we have to even think about that as a thing? It's like, I know it sounds like paranoid and shit, but it's like one day it's like what's going to happen with everything being in this one place, and it's just like, I don't know. That's my thoughts on music and social media.
Right. Yeah, thank you. Uh, I'll do that.
So I just said something really like deep and long, but then it wasn't recording, so now I'm gonna say it. But basically, like I just wanted to end off to go back into like the role of like music and art and like social change and all those things. And I wanted to end it off with a quote, and it's by like a folk punk artist. And you already know, like even if you listen to this interview, I'm sure you know how I feel about punk in the terms of like, and folk punk being like very very white coded, especially like the spaces I've been in the city, and like it being like very performative in terms of talking about oppression. It's like you're talking about racism, but you only have white friends, or like, and it's like I feel like a lot of the time it's like falling back on being queer to distance from whiteness. And then it's like a lot of people pretending to be poor. Like I'll be like, oh, like you grew up in the suburbs in like a white middle class home and shit, and it's like you're pretending like it's like turning being poor into an aesthetic, which is really weird and objectifying. And it's like I'll figure out like all these people that I thought like definitely came from like a way harder like like lifestyle growing up than I did, like really grew up the same. And it just kind of is weird to me. Like I don't know why people want to pretend to be poor. And like but that anyways, like I just wanted to take the quote from this folk punk artist out of context and kind of look at it in a vacuum. And it's like it says a punk rock song won't ever change the world, but I can tell you about a couple that changed me. And it's like, so I think like, that's the role of music. It's like we have to be really careful because it can change people like on a fundamental level, like so deeply. And like, it's not just punk, like it's music in general. I think that's what's important. And it's like, like music is like magic in a way. Like it can, like, I think a friend was talking about this, but I'll leave out their name for anonymity. But like it's like something I think about a lot too. And like music is like magic in the sense of like you can literally play a song and it makes someone move. Like you'll feel the rhythm and like move involuntarily almost, or like you'll like it can bring up emotions or feelings, like literally make someone remember a memory. Like it's really like just a lot. Like it's like I can just like play like this chord and then just remember, like all of a sudden now I'm remembering like being in this like this like some basement and shit and doing like types of work. It's just like it's interesting. Like it's really cool. I think like that's, but then there's so much power in that, and I think that's where we have to be careful, because it's not just like, music has not only changed me for the better. There's music that has changed me for like the worse, like a lot worse, in the sense of like there's stuff that has just perpetuated all this like toxicity. Like I mean, like look at like folk punk for example, and like it turns like like what I was saying about that. And it's just like there's, it like there's music that has normalized certain forms of harm. And like that's why I think in the role of music, it's like, where it can be such a strong influence on people, to the point that like, people are using it for good and for bad. And I think it's just like in that it's like you have to respect it, the music, like, and not the bad music. I just mean like in being musicians, like you have to respect that that is like something that is goes so much more than me just like strumming the guitar. And like it's just like, music can change a lot. Okay,
All right, bro.
so the phone died, but that was how I wanted to end it, with that quote. And I just also want to say thank you so much, because like, to be honest, I've been having like a really shit time in a lot of ways, in terms of my mental health at least, and just like trauma being triggered and shit, and just thinking about shit. And like it was really nice to be able to get my thoughts out. Like I really miss this. And also like you're one of my best friends, so it's always nice talking to you, and I really appreciate you. Like, yeah, I appreciate you a lot. And anyone that's listening to, I appreciate you listening to this whole thing. That's really nice. And yeah, like just, yeah, I love you.
So we are gonna end it. That was Transient Girl. You can see Transient Girl on the 28th of November at the third part of the All Architect Fall series. Again, that is on the 28th. All right, you can click the link now.
Yay, okay. I'm just gonna like improvise and then play a song. Spit dripping from my lips, straight for cash, sickened. If I was cis, it would be easy, but I'm not, and I don't want to be that way. I'm more than just my body. I'm more than just my voice. I'm more than these plastic earrings and the things the doctor said. Like I will make you a real girl. But I don't even know what he meant. I'm more than just my body. The dead thing between my legs. Sick of how I'll never be the best thing. I'm DOA. I wish I could breathe. Oh, I wish I could breathe. And I don't want to be your whore anymore. And I don't want to see your face, your face, it's a waste. Thank you so much. I appreciate. That can be the end.